right, today, now that we're all here, we're going to be talking about Upaya Kashalai, which means skill and means. And in the Lotus Sutra, there's a whole chapter called the Skill and Means chapter. Sorry about the chair being in the way. It's the only way I can keep the camera up. And we have people like in England and Sweden, Puerto Rico, Malaysia, Vietnam, different places that actually go to the YouTube channel and watch these. So rather than doing 2 or 3 things, I only do one, so everybody gets to see. This time, however, there's so many lists that I'm going to run through. There will be 2 of these up. One will be a narrated version of the PowerPoint, and the other will be the video, which shows me, because I've always wanted to be an actor. I've always wanted to make movies. I could have been Matt Damon. Okay. Or a short Sean Connery. Upaya Kaushalai means skill and means. And in the Lotus Sutra, I think it's the 2nd chapter, don't quote me, it's called Virtue, and that's called the Skillful Means chapter. And we were talking earlier, it's always surprising to me how little people know about their own faith. How little people know about other people's faith. But in Buddhism, we talk a lot about skill and means, and that is usually taken to mean is to teach someone on a level that they can understand it. Not everybody's at the same level. So what happened is that, well, there are a lot of interesting stories. There's a story of the 2 brothers that came to the Buddha, and the Buddha was teaching them, and one was a little handicapped, a little slow, and the other one was brilliant. And so the brilliant one caught everything right away, became an arhat, the fully enlightened being. And his brother just couldn't get it, but his brother could sweep. So the Buddha gave him a broom and said, just sweep away. If you've ever been to a monastery in Asia, it's interesting, they don't have concrete. It's gravel and dirt. So what you're actually doing is you're sweeping the dirt. You're getting the dirt level. And that's what this guy did. And so the guy just swept, repeating, sweep, I sweep, I sweep, I sweep. And after about 4 or 5 months of doing this, he became fully enlightened. Because he was concentrating, and this is where the guy was at. This is as far as he could go. So the idea behind skillful means is we start from where we are. It's like if you want to go to Santa Fe, New Mexico, you can't just jump on a highway and drive straight to Santa Fe. You have to get like on I-80 and drive in that general direction until you get to Colorado. Then you take a left turn on I-25 and you drive past Santa Fe. Then you have to get off the highway at a place called Pecos, west of the Pecos, famous expression in the United States. No law west of the Pecos. Where's Donald Trump from? Is he from west of the Pecos? Anyway, then you got to get on another highway and drive into Santa Fe. So you can't get there from here. Enlightenment, we can't get there from here. So we have to be taught these expedient means. Now, the Buddha gave us a lot of expedient means. The historical Buddha did. And what he called them were paths to liberation. The famous paths to liberation are the 4 Noble Truths. The 4th one being the Eightfold Path. You're wondering what this has to do with Pure Land Buddhism, aren't you? We'll get there. And we talk about these means. They're called the Magga, or Marga in Sanskrit. And so there are all these texts from original Buddhism which talk about these different ways of becoming enlightened. In one of the texts, the oldest text that we know of, the Atthakavagga, it's called, it's part of the Sutta Nipata. Very, very old text. We're pretty sure the historical Buddha actually taught this. Anyway, it's many, many words, and there's a word that is totally missing, and the word is nibbana, what we call nirvana in Sanskrit and English. And the Buddha discusses the ideal person. And he doesn't say the goal is to find nirvana. He doesn't even call it enlightenment. What he says is the ideal person is characterized by suddhi, mental purity, and santi, calm. This is what a person should be. Mentally pure. Well, what's mental purity? No attachments, no aversion, and as little ignorance as possible. And that should lead to calm. Santi, by the way, is where our word saint, sanctified, sangha, and sacred all come from. Calm. Now, the commentaries on this were written 600-700 years later. And they totally expanded on this idea of what an enlightened person looks like, what the ideal person looks like. And suddenly you get words like vipassana thrown in there, and shamatha is totally disregarded. Jhana turns into mindfulness instead of the altered states of consciousness that the Buddha actually practiced. So there are a lot of changes going on during 400, 500, 600 years after the Buddha's death. More and more stuff is getting thrown in there. So we know what the Buddha actually said. We also know what later commentators said when they elaborated on the Buddha's teaching. Does that make their teachings wrong? Absolutely not, because they never contradict the Buddha. It's not until we get into the Mahayana that we do that, where we start contradicting the Buddha. Why do we contradict the Buddha? Because a lot of times he says things that are very, very uncomfortable, like the 5 precepts: not killing or harming another, not stealing, not cheating on our spouses, not deliberately telling a lie, and not becoming intoxicated. That last one's interesting because, well, a little drink's not going to hurt. A little bit of intoxication is not going to hurt. We like to bend that one, right? It's like, we don't bend the other ones. We don't say a little murder is okay. Unless they happen to be people of different color, then we'll bomb the hell out of their country. We don't say a little white lie is okay, unless you're a lawyer or a politician or in business, or a minister. We don't say a little adultery is okay. That's why the pornography business is booming. And we don't say it's okay to steal. Just a little bit. That's why we cheat on our taxes, so we can steal from somebody. Of course we break the precepts. Of course we do. We're human. But the precepts were a pretty big deal in this. That's how one remains calm, by keeping the precepts. Why are we calm? Because we never have to look over our back, looking for people behind us that we've harmed, looking for people that we've robbed, looking for people that we lied to, looking for our spouse because we cheated on them. We don't have to look over our shoulder for people that are mad at us. Okay? Later on in the Nikayas, the 4 Nikayas, original 4 Nikayas, are about as old as the Sutta Nipata. There's Digha Nikaya 13. It's called the Tevijja Sutta, and verses 40 through 75 give us another path that we can follow if we can't really do the Eightfold Path, Noble Path. First verse, the first verse that we'll deal with, number 40, says, a Tathagata is born into the world to make his knowledge known to others. That sounds awfully Mahayana. Does that not sound Mahayana? A Tathagata deliberately is born into this world to make his wisdom known to others. In other words, to save others. That's what they say in Mahayana. And this is the Pali Canon that's saying this. So, we know that Tathagatas, Buddhas, and come into this realm to teach, to save, to make salvation available to others. Of course, they can't save us. We have to do that. The next verse says, a householder listens to that truth, acquires faith, and goes forth from the household life into the homeless state. The model for this is he gives up everything, just like the historical Buddha is said to have done, left his home and his family, go out into the woods, join a monastery, meditate for 16 hours a day, become enlightened, and then stay in the monastery. This is the path of the sage. And this is the model that we use because of sentences like that are all throughout the Pali. Now what we did was we took the symbol, which is the expedient, skillful means, and we forgot the meaning behind it. The symbol, homelessness, the meaning, become a monastic. Right? Wrong. What the Buddha meant by homelessness is encapsulated in a word called anagarika, the left home one. The left home one is a householder, usually married, can be male or female, have kids, have a business, handle money, but they left home. They left this home. A home, mentally speaking, is a view. It's an attachment, an aversion. Where do some people find their home? They find their home in their religious views. They find their home in their political views. They find their home in their philosophical views. They find their home in their identity as parents, or as attorneys, or as CPAs, or as Buddhist teachers. This is their home. Buddha says, get rid of it. Don't identify yourself as this, that, or the other thing. Because you're not this, that, or the other thing. You're vast. You're huge. You're not one thing or another. So this is what is meant by homelessness. Next verse, he passes a life self-restrained, good in his conduct, guarding the door of his senses, mindful and self-possessed. In other words, he's following the 5 precepts, 8 in the case of Anagarika. He guards the sense doors by not getting carried away with things that we see, things that we smell, things that we taste. This person's not going to be a foodie. They're not going to be an art critic. They're not going to be judgmental. That means they can't join a religion that uses a lot of judgment, like, you're going to hell if you don't believe my way. None of that. So this is a homeless one. This results in confidence in the heart, which results from a sense of goodness. It results in Calmness because he's guarding his sense doors. He's not getting all excited. I'm using the generic he. The way that he is mindful and self-possessed. His habit of being content with little. This is the Buddhist view of what a wealthy person is. A person is not wealthy because they can buy a lot. A person is wealthy when they need little. That's wealth in Buddhism. He has conquered the 5 hindrances, each with an explanatory smile. Okay, you can smile at the hindrances. What are the hindrances? Attachment, aversion, sloth and torpor, which is restlessness and boredom. I gotta be entertained. That's why I watch Doctor Who as often as possible. Doubt. And, oh yeah, the X-Files came back. Yes. And ignorance. 5. There are actually 10, but those 5 will do. If we can get rid of those, we're guaranteed to become enlightened. And lastly, the joy and peace which results from this conquest fills his whole being. So this is what an enlightened person looks like. They follow the precepts diligently. They've gotten rid of the hindrances. They're calm and happy. Later, that state became called nibbana or nirvana in our language, or somebody's language. Then the Buddha also talks about a path of purification. First, purification of conduct. Again, we're back to keeping the precepts. Purification of mind, getting rid of the 5 hindrances. The purification of view, getting rid of all the judgments and preconceptions. Nothing is right or wrong. In a lot of religions, we have a lot of black and white, good versus evil. In Buddhism, we have a lot of different shades of color. Now, there's black and white, but in between, there's this whole rainbow of colors, of all kinds of shades. Everything is a gray area. Let me mix my metaphors there. Then there's the purification by overcoming doubt, and the purification by knowledge and vision of what is and what is not the path. Is this a legitimate way to attain enlightenment? Is this not a legitimate way to go toward enlightenment? Do I get to Santa Fe by heading east toward New Jersey? No. I have to go west toward New Mexico. Enlightenment is in a specific direction. That means I have to be on a specific path. Then there's purification by knowledge and vision of the course of practice. Purification of knowledge, knowing what is and what is not important. I was listening to two guys talking, and what it was one guy that had a lot of self-esteem issues got a haircut. And he got one of those modern haircuts, it's from the medieval period, where they shave the side, white walls that we used to call it. Marines get them a lot, where it's white walled here, and then there's this tuft of hair up here. So the guy got that, and this older guy was just reaming him a new one, telling him, oh my God, that's terrible, people are going to run away from you, you look like a convict, blah, blah, blah. He looked like a Marine. Just as bad, I suppose. Anyway, so the guy was going on and on and on and on and on. They asked me what I thought. It's a stupid effing haircut. Why would I even get involved in this conversation? And that's what I told him. I just looked at the kid and said, it's not so bad. If you don't like it, it'll grow out. That's okay. What other kind of knowledges are there? Knowledge of contemplation of dissolution. Well, before that, there's contemplation of the rising and falling. Then there's contemplation of dissolution. What are we talking about there? How phenomena and experience come into being, have a short duration, and then disappear. Everything is constantly rising, existing for a moment, and disappearing. We call that mind stream. Mind stream, we think of mind stream as, I existed far back into the past, infinitely far, and I will exist infinitely into the future because my mind stream just keeps going. It's not my mind stream. Mind stream is moment-to-moment experience where we're constantly changing from one kind of being into another. A being which is happy changes into a being which is sad. So we're watching this constant change. Knowledge of that. Knowledge of anicca, it's called. Watching a candle is a great meditation. Look how that is constantly changing. It's constantly flickering and changing into something else. It's still a candle, but it's never the same candle twice. Constantly changes. And then there's knowledge of the contemplation of danger. What is danger? Just about anything I'm addicted to. Whether that's an opinion, a view, a conceit, Lay's potato chips, chocolate ice cream. Ooh, somebody out there likes chocolate ice cream. Then there's contemplation of dispassion. Not investing a lot of energy into stuff that doesn't matter, like stupid effing haircuts. Knowledge for the desire for deliverance. Deliverance from our attachments, aversions, and ignorance. Knowledge of equanimity about formations. Our mental formations, our sanskara, what we call karma. And then conformity of knowledge, putting it in context of the Dharma. It goes on to the seventh purification, that is purification by knowledge and vision. Before, we were just purifying our knowledge and vision. Now we are purified by the knowledge and vision that we have purified before. And this involves a change of lineage, gotrabu in Sanskrit and in Pali. And that means I am no longer my father's son, I'm no longer my mother's son, I am a son of the Buddha. This is my lineage, the enlightened ones. And when Buddhism got to China, that was the first thing people complained about because China had such a strong history of what's called filial piety, family first. And Buddhism was saying, no, not family first, your sanity first, then your family. You can't help them if you're crazy. And we're all batshit crazy. I mean, look at the stuff we do. We spend an entire lifetime accumulating wealth so we can get sick and spend all our wealth to get healthy. Doesn't make sense. We live like we're never going to die, and when we die, we discover we never really lived. That's crazy. So, the Buddha gave us this path of purification to help us out with that. The emphasis on this system is the 3 marks of existence. 4 and 10 die. 3 marks of existence. Dukkha is number 1, what we call suffering. Doesn't mean suffering, but we call it suffering. Anicca, impermanence, change, and anatta, nothing is personal. Means no self. Now, answer your question. The great vehicle. Mahayana. The great vehicle, which the founder of my tradition says doesn't actually exist. There's Buddhayana And that's it. But we, in our infinite wisdom, as human beings, have decided some yanas are better than other yanas. And the truth is, whether it's Hinayana, Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana, it doesn't matter what yana, they're all good. They're all expedient means, skillful means, because we got to start where we're at. Mahayana Buddhism is based upon something called the path of the Bodhisattva. Mahayana means great vehicle, and it was originally an honorific term for Bodhisattva Yama, the way of the Bodhisattva, one who is bent on becoming a Buddha. That's all it is. That's all it means. Mahayana was an attitude originally. Then it became a religion all its own. But originally, you had Theravadins, the other 18 types of elders, Mahayanas and Vajrayanas, all in the same monasteries. And you couldn't tell the difference because it was about attitude. Why am I becoming enlightened? I'm becoming enlightened to help others. Others would say, I'm becoming enlightened to help myself. And if you understood emptiness, they're the same idea. In emptiness, there is no self. There are no others. There just is. So if I become enlightened, everybody becomes enlightened. If I can help you become enlightened and you become enlightened before I do, then I become enlightened because you just helped me out. 6 of one, half dozen of the other. The earliest known Mahayana definition for a bodhisattva is found in, I hate this word, okay, the Ashtasahasrika Prajnaparamita Sutra. Say that 3 times fast, sober. Virtually impossible. And what it says is because he has enlightenment as his aim, a bodhisattva, mahasattva, is so called. Anybody that wants to become enlightened is a bodhisattva, mahasattva, great being. An awakening being, great being. That's what that means. So anybody, whether you're a Theravadan, a Hinayanist, a Tendai, a Pure Lander, a Zen, a Tibetan, doesn't matter. You're a bodhisattva. You're on the Mahayana path. That's what that means. Later on, we changed that, of course. Mahayana Buddhism encourages that everybody become a bodhisattva, that is, desirous to become a Buddha for the benefit of others. And if we take the bodhisattva vow, we vow to enlighten others. Matter of fact, some people go so far as to say, I will not become a Buddha unless everybody else becomes a Buddha first. It's kind of silly. If we're all waiting around for everybody else to become enlightened, who's going to be the first? If I'm waiting for you and you're waiting for me, neither one of us are going to move. Where do all things exist? Do I experience, or do you experience anything out here? Where are you experiencing that candle? You're not experiencing it out there. You're experiencing it in here. This is where you experience everybody. So in my mind, if my aim is to enlighten everyone else, then I have to see everybody else as being enlightened. That's waiting for everybody else to become enlightened first. Then I can become enlightened. In Pure Land Buddhism, there's a saying, if I'm an ordinary person, I see everybody as ordinary. If I'm an arahant, I see everybody as an arahant. If I'm a bodhisattva, I see everybody as a bodhisattva. If I'm a Buddha, I see everybody as a Buddha. So if I can see everybody as a Buddha, then it must mean I'm a Buddha. That's part of the bodhisattva path. That's part of what this actually means. We've taken the symbol and forgotten what it means. We have to put the meaning back into the symbol. Okay. The Mahayana path is described in terms of 5 paths. Let's start over. 6 paramitas, 5 paths, and 10 bhumis. You'll be testing this later. Okay, the 6 paramitas. Starts out with generosity, especially towards your teacher. Generosity, the attitude of giving, fostering an attitude of giving of yourself, giving of the Dharma, giving of goods, the giving of fearlessness, which is very important, making everyone feel safe. Everyone includes the bunny rabbits, the kittens, the puppies, the spiders, and the snakes. Everyone. Then there is the Shila Paramita, virtue, morality. We're back to the precepts again. We're back to keeping rules by not doing anything to harm another. Kshanti Paramita, patience, tolerance, non-judgmentalism, forbearance, acceptance. And then there's Virya Paramita, energy, diligence, vigor, effort. Does any of this sound like it came from the Eightfold Path? Sounds a lot like the Eightfold Path. The Dhyana Paramita, one-pointed concentration. We're not talking Vipassana here, we're talking about jhana, one-pointed concentration. Altered states of consciousness, seeing things differently because of that one-pointed concentration. And the 6th one is Prajna Paramita, wisdom. Knowing what's going on, knowing what is important. And the 5 paths, Tibetans love this one because it sounds complicated. It's a lot easier than it sounds. The path of accumulation. What are we accumulating? Desire to overcome suffering for ourselves and others. Renunciation of the worldly life. Renunciation says, I'm not going to invest a lot of energy in entertainment of any kind. I can get entertained in a lot of simple ways, like watching the new X-Files on Monday nights, when I should be at Kurt's Cafe teaching meditation. Okay. X-Files will come back as a rerun, right? Okay. The path of preparation or application. Actually starting to meditate. Actually analyzing the idea of emptiness and having an intellectual understanding of it. That's the 2nd path. The 3rd path is the path of seeing. That is having a profound meditative experience where there is a direct perception of emptiness, where I've actually realized what emptiness looks like. This is important because this particular aspect of meditation also informs us of what reality really looks like, not the illusion that we're creating of reality. By the way, that was a great video, that TED Talk you turned me on to. It's all in the Abhidhamma, totally explained in there. But we do recreate our reality. Whatever it is we think we're experiencing, we're reconstructing in our mind. We're creating a perception. Once we experience emptiness, we go beyond perception and actually see things for what they are. Then comes the 4th, the path of meditation. Now, how is this different from what we've done before? The path of meditation is mindfulness in what we do day in and day out. It's like trying to be mindful 24/7. Very, very difficult. And then the fifth one is the path of no more learning. It is the consummation where we have learned intellectually everything that we can possibly learn. Now it's time to experience it. The 10 bhumis. Bhumi means ground, and it's mentioned in the Pali Canon, and in Mahayana they just elaborated on it. It's found in the Avatamsaka Sutra. I think that's probably the only place where all 10 are listed. And the first one is called the ground of being very joyous. When one realizes a partial aspect of truth, where a light goes on going, oh, that's truth, that's reality. Don't have to know everything, that's enough, just get started. Then there's called the stainless ground, which one is free from all defilements. Most of us never get that far. We're stuck on a little bit of truth part. Then there's the luminous ground, where we radiate light and wisdom. Then there's, of course, all these are symbols. You're not really going to walk around with an aura and, be able to read a newspaper by your own light in the middle of the night. It's not going to happen. There's the path, or the ground, which is difficult to contemplate, which is getting over the darkness of illusion. The ground of manifest, supreme wisdom begins to manifest. The gone after, one arises above the state of the two vehicles. We're still going here. The immovable. One dwells firmly in the truth of the middle way and cannot be perturbed by anything. Number 9, the good intelligence, where we preach the law freely and without restriction. And finally, the cloud of doctrine, which benefits all sentient beings with the law of Dharma. Of course, these, again, are like all symbolic. They're symbols that tell us what an enlightened person would look like. And so the teaching becomes a skillful mean, because it represents the truth, but it is not the truth. And that's what all these skillful means are about. They represent the truth. They are not the truth themselves. Just like a picture of my mother represents my mother, it is not my mother. My memory of that flickering candle represents the flickering candle. It is not the flickering candle. As a matter of fact, looking at the flickering candle is not the flickering candle, but only a representation of the flickering candle. Everything in Buddhism is a metaphor. Everything is a symbol. Now, what happens in Upaya, these skillful means, is that people forget that. And they start replacing the meaning and just having the symbol. And they start making stuff up as they go along. So if I use a skillful mean and I say, okay, the Lotus Sutra is the ultimate teaching of the Buddha, and all teachings before the Lotus Sutra where expedient means meant to teach the foolish that could not grasp the entire truth, what am I saying? I'm saying that Ananda, Sariputra, Mahakasyapa, the Buddha's wife, the Buddha's mother, the Buddha's father, the Buddha's son, were not really enlightened because they didn't get taught the entire truth. That all the people that lived 500 years BCE, up to 500 years BCE, were not enlightened. Because the Lotus Sutra was written at about the year 0. and didn't become finalized till sometime in the 1st century CE. So until the Lotus Sutra was available, nobody actually got enlightened. That's sort of like the fundamentalist Christian that says until Jesus died and was resurrected, everybody went to hell because heaven wasn't available. It's nonsense. Just because the Lotus Sutra suddenly appears around the 1st century AD, CE, boy, talk about habit, pops up around 2,000 years ago, does not mean that nobody before that became enlightened. What it means is that there's a different explanation about enlightenment now. Where that explanation changes is in the word Tathagata. And we saw it earlier in the Digha Nikaya when I was talking about the Tavija Sutta. A Tathagata comes to earth to teach. Tathagata is generally translated as the thus gone one, the one who has gone through reality. But it can also mean the one who has come from reality, or the one that goes to and comes back from reality. And that's what a Buddha does. He goes to reality, goes, oh, this is it, and comes back and tells us about it. So they change the emphasis. I'm not going anywhere. I'm already here. I just had to become enlightened. Here. Go to reality, because this is reality. This is the only reality I've got. In some Mahayana texts, like, again, the Lotus Sutra, can be interpreted to say that every teaching that came before was inferior. And that's just nonsense. Zhi Yi, the founder of Tiantai, systematically reordered the Buddhist teachings, the sutras, into different groups, and said that this is the highest teaching, so the Buddha taught this at the end, and these are the lowest teachings, so he taught this at the beginning, and they come up with this really nice categorization. It's symbolic. It's not meant to be taken literally. The Buddha did not teach the Lotus Sutra during the last 3 weeks of his life. Actually, the Buddha didn't teach the Lotus Sutra at all. It's an interpretation of earlier Buddhist teachings. So, that's what people do. Also in the Lotus Sutra, there is an example that we can take on many faces. And by putting on these different masks, we can teach more effectively. And it's the story of Avalokiteshvara, that lady there. Whereas in some parts of Asia, she appears as a woman, a beautiful woman, sometimes as a mother, sometimes as a sister, sometimes as a friend, sometimes as a mentor. Sometimes she appears as a nun. In western parts of Asia, it's a he. And he appears sometimes as a monk, sometimes as a father, sometimes as a brother. And the idea is that Avalokiteshvara can manifest in any way we need him or her to manifest, so we can become more enlightened than we are now, because enlightenment is a process. But guess what? Anybody can do that. You can become a factor and a cause of enlightenment for others by assuming a different role. Sometimes we assume a role where we're co-workers and buddies. Sometimes we don't need to be a buddy. Sometimes we need to be a mentor. Sometimes we need to be a friend. Sometimes we need to be a teacher. Sometimes we need to scrub the toilets. Sometimes we don't want our ego to get in the way of the benefit of others. And that's what that means, changing the faces, becoming for others what is most necessary for them. It means putting our ego aside, relying on the other power, the power that is not my selfishness. Unfortunately, there are some traditions, mainly in the Himalayans, where Upaya, this idea of skillful means, has been turned into an idea called crazy wisdom. You might have heard about it. Chogyam Trungpa was a big expounder of crazy wisdom. Died of alcoholism. But we're not enlightened, so we don't understand that he was dying of alcoholism for our benefit. His heart disciple who took over Shambhala and his role as main teacher at Naropa was a monk. He happened to have HIV. Passed it on to about 150 other men, some of whom died. But we're not enlightened, so we didn't understand that the guy killed all these men for our benefit. George Baker, Shunryu Suzuki's successor at the San Francisco Zen Center. Suzuki was my teacher at the San Francisco Zen Center. I had a lot of great teachers, by the way. My favorite was Ajahn Chah, who always liked to say, "This is the way it is." Said it with authority. And then if we started arguing about anything or we say something stupid, he'd just raise his hand and say, "That's bullshit," and walk off. Then we had to figure out what part. Usually it was that part. But George Baker slept with almost every woman at the San Francisco Zen Center. For our benefit, of course. He's teaching us a lesson. This is the problem with Upaya. We get into crazy wisdom and we can justify things. And then the followers of the teachers that are not keeping the precepts start arguing with us, telling us, well, they're doing it for our benefit to teach us a lesson. Like Geshe Michael Roach, who, as a fully ordained celibate monk, got married in secret, and then almost killed his ex-wife and her second husband in the deserts of Arizona by sending them out without water in the middle of the desert so they can dehydrate. I mean, crazy, right? Very wise, very wise. Not being enlightened, I don't understand why that happened. So that's the thing about crazy wisdom. Like the Zen priest that broke the guy's leg to make a point. Expedient means Vajrayana, the Tantras, the highest form of Buddhist teaching. Nonsense, it's not the highest form of Buddhist teaching. But the Dalai Lama tells us it's the highest form of Buddhist teaching, so we have to believe him because he's the Dalai Lama. Vajrayana is an expedient means. There's a lot of stuff in Vajrayana which is opposed to the Buddha's teaching. I use Vajrayana. I really enjoy Vajrayana, but I know it's not Buddhism. But it's helpful. It's very enjoyable, it's very helpful, visualizing these deities and imagining that I'm becoming one. What it does is it helps us imagine what it would be like to be a Buddha. That's what it's for. The rituals are there to help it to remind us of the teachings. The objects are there as symbols of deeper teachings. This is what Vajrayana is about. It's not a Buddhist teaching. The Buddha never taught this stuff. Vajrayana, the word Vajrayana, was first used around the time of 800 CE. It's very new as far as Buddhist stuff is concerned. The greatest form of upaya, skillful means, in Buddhism today, the most popular form, almost unknown over here, is called Pure Land Buddhism. It's totally a skillful mean. Amitabha, a symbol of emptiness and enlightenment, of total compassion and wisdom. The Pure Land, a symbol of what happens to the mind when it becomes enlightened. We don't die and go to a Pure Land. Once upon a time, somebody decided there's got to be an easier way than going to the monastery and hanging out and meditating 16 hours a day and sweeping floors. Got to be a better way, easier way. After all, I'm a business person. I've got a beautiful wife, a really hot neighbor, a lot of money. I really like to drink. I really like food, so I'm built like this. I really like a good time. There's got to be an easier way to become enlightened. Ah, faith only, says so in the suttas. So if I only have faith, and at the last moment of my life, if I remember Amitabha Buddha, I will go to the Pure Land. Even though the Buddha said, we got to save ourselves. Can't rely on anybody else. I have to do it myself. But Amitabha will come down with an entourage to take me into the Pure Land. Just like that.
Doesn't he have a vow? Amitabha Buddha? It's one of his 48 vows where he said that.
They're all symbolic.
Okay. But I will not become Buddha if I'm not able to.
Right. Right, yes, the 48 vows, especially the 18th vow, is important. But they're symbolic.
So he doesn't actually mean that? Or in what sense is it symbolic?
If Amitabha Buddha actually existed, he would have had to existed in a parallel universe before this universe was created or formed, before the Big Bang. So we're actually talking about an alien from another dimension saying and doing all this stuff. It was all meant to be symbolic. These vows are important to us, for us to remember, because this is what we're supposed to be doing. He didn't take the vows for it. With all due respect to Shinran and Honan and all these Shandao and all these guys, they missed the point. Yes, I said that. One cannot. It'll be on YouTube tonight. I said that. They missed the point. If they really believed that Amitabha was a real living, breathing being that made 48 vows and created a pure land to escort us to that pure land, they missed the point. First of all, the Buddha, the historical Buddha, said that when a person becomes enlightened and they enter into parinibbana, which is the death of a fully enlightened being from this life, their consciousness is no longer seen by ordinary people. There is no trace of them to be found. They're one with the universe, totally one with the universe. So any Buddha that you see is not the Buddha. It's a representation of the Buddha. The very name Amitabha was, boy, I wrote an article on this and I wish I could remember the exact stuff that I put in there. But the word Amitabha is almost identical to a Zoroastrian angel. And Pure Land Buddhism began in that area of Persia and Kandahar in that area, Afghanistan. And so they borrowed a lot from local religions to make Buddhism more palatable. It is not that Amitabha comes to rescue us from anything. It is that we are Amitabha. It is not that we go to a pure land. We're already in a pure land. This is it. This is the pure land. How do you make it more pure? How do I see the pure land in here? I see the pure land here in this world by purifying my mind, by becoming Amitabha, by getting rid of the 5 hindrances. If I get rid of the 5 hindrances, according to the historical Buddha, I become an anagama. What is an anagama? An anagama is a person that dies in this lifetime, never to return. Why? They go to the Pure Land. The Buddha already told us this. The Buddha never spoke the Amitabha Sutra. Buddha had been dead for like 500 years before the Amitabha Sutra was committed to paper, before anybody actually mentioned Amitabha. Amitabha is a symbol, and a very, very nice symbol. A symbol of what we can become if we are fully, authentically human. Amitabha is the other power, the power that we manifest when we're not getting in our own way with our own ego. So we pray to Amitabha. We light incense to Amitabha to become connected to the infinite compassion and wisdom of the universe. Where is the universe? Yeah. That's where the infinite compassion and wisdom of the universe resides. It resides right here. In this bag of bones and skin and phlegm and pus and urine and everything else that's in here, with its 6 senses. That's the universe. If I don't like my environment, it's because I'm the one who's creating an environment I don't like. I'm sorry. The bad news is life sucks. The good news is I'm causing it to suck. If I'm causing it, all I have to do is change it. Oh my God, we're back to the 4 Noble Truths. And that's how it works. And I love Pure Land Buddhism, because I understand Pure Land Buddhism. And I don't have to cry out, oh please Amitabha, Avalokiteshvara, Mahastampatra, please come down and help me. They're already here helping me. They're here within me. This is the Pure Land. Once you purify the mind, the land becomes pure. This is the land. It's not for nothing this is not called the mud world. I mean, look at what we're made of. Water and dirt. We're the mud. It's called the Saha world because we have to endure. Saha means endurance. Doesn't mean candy store. It means endurance. We have to endure the life that we are creating. Yeah, stuff happens to us. We break our leg, we get run down by a drunk, we get diseased, we get sick. Isn't that wonderful? Stuff happens. When stuff happens, we get to enter into the Pure Land and make something decent and wonderful of it. So we get sick and we go, oh no, I'm sick again. If you're living in the Pure Land, oh boy, I'm sick again. Pure Land is counterintuitive. That's why it's such a beautiful teaching. It tells us we have this life to enjoy here and now. We don't have to die and go somewhere. Enlightenment is not only possible here and now, this is the only place it's going to happen. Because when you're dead, you're gone.
So for really devout, Pure Land practitioners, when they pass away, where does their consciousness go? Assuming
It enters into the stream of
the
consciousness.
Dharmakaya?
Into the Dharmakaya, yeah.
Okay. And they don't come back to reincarnate into...
They don't come back as they left. That whole process is never fully explained in Buddhism.
Okay.
Because it's beyond the power of words to explain. When a person dies, they enter into the Dharmakaya. It's like entering in a big pot. And you're throwing in all these ingredients into this soup. We're just more ingredients into the soup. And then we pop out, depending upon our karma, we manifest, reemerge, another time, another place. Now, because we're earthbound beings, we assume that we're going to manifest as somebody or something else in the future here on earth. Not necessarily so. We could manifest in the past just as easily because time's an illusion. We could manifest in a parallel universe, on a different planet, in a different dimension. We have an infinite number of places to manifest.
Or we can manifest in a Pure Land, right?
Or we can manifest in a Pure Land.
Yeah, there's accounts of people being reborn, born into the Pure Land, and they're born into one of the 3 different grades of lotus flowers, depending
Yeah,
on
there are reports
how
about
enlightened
that.
they are.
But how did they tell us about that? Yeah, because if you enter into the Pure Land, by definition, if you die and go to the Pure Land, you're not coming back here. By definition.
So how do those stories get passed around? Or does
It makes
just
people
come up
feel
with
good.
that
It makes people feel good.
pacify
Yeah, they're like the heaven and hell story of other religions. We have our heaven and hell stories too. And what they are is that they're stories that say, if you're bad, this is what's going to happen. If you're good, this is what's going to happen. So everybody's encouraged to be good. So we tell these stories. And it's called an upaya, an expedient means. If I cannot get you to behave by rewarding you here and now, I can talk about punishments that you'll get if you don't behave. That would be hell. Or I can tell you about rewards you will get in the future if you do behave, and that would be Pure Land or heaven. But Pure Land would necessarily also have to be temporary because it's still within the realm of samsara. And the only place to go from Pure Land is into the Dharmakaya, the body of reality. Because you'd have to be a Buddha. You couldn't come back here. Not as you are. Make sense? It's called rational Amidism, is this teaching. And what it does is it takes Pure Land Buddhism, turns it on its head, and makes it conform to what the Buddha taught. Because otherwise it doesn't. And otherwise it's a very lazy way to go through life. Here's a story. It was supposed to have happened at the time of the Buddha. We'll say it happened in India. And this guy he thought Buddhism was really, really hard. But somebody told him that if he dies and he just has a good thought at the time that he dies, he'll go to heaven. And he says, great, what's a good thought? And the guy says, well, the highest thought is the triple gem, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. He says, how am I going to remember that at the time of my death? I've got so much troubles. I got business troubles. I'm a rich man. I got to keep the shop open. How am I going to? And then he came up with an idea. He's got 3 sons. So he grabbed his 3 sons. He went down to the courthouse and got their names legally changed to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Because when he died, he knew his kids would be by the bed. And then he just looked at it and he remembered Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And he died and go to heaven. Well, on his deathbed, he was laying there, dying. And his sons came in and went, oh, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. If you're here, who the hell's minding the store? And then he died. So he went to hell anyway. And that's sort of what the Pure Land teaching does. If we remember Amitabha and with our last breath and just remember to recite Amitabha's name, then we'll go to Pure Land. That's not what it means. It means if we remember Buddha, Amitabha Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, medicine Buddha, doesn't matter, any Buddha. If we remember the Buddha, the teachings of the Buddha, because the Buddha said, he who has seen the Tathagata has seen the Dharmakaya, seen the body of reality. So if I remember the body of reality constantly throughout my life, and that body of reality happens to manifest in my mind as Amitabha Buddha, it's much easier to recite Namo Amitabha Buddha, Namo Amitabha Buddha, Namo Amitabha Buddha, than body of reality, body of reality, body of reality. Because I can put a name and a face to the body of reality if I'm calling it Amitabha Buddha. Nichiren does the same thing with Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, except they're calling it the Lotus teaching. Theravada is the same thing. Namo tassa bhagavato arahanto sammasambuddhassa. Remembering the Buddha. It all goes back to the teaching of Buddha remembrance, which is the first and highest form of meditation according to Shakyamuni Buddha. When he gave us the 40 objects of meditation, the very first, Buddha remembrance. And that's what Pure Land Buddhism is actually about, is remembering Buddha.
It's also important that you live your whole life as a virtuous person. You can't just rely
Absolutely.
on the last few seconds remembering Buddha and
Absolutely.
expecting to go to a good place when you spend all your life, like wasting your whole life.
Oh, you're absolutely right. If a person has the kind of faith that Pure Land Buddhism demands, if you have that kind of faith, you're going to be living that kind of a life. If you don't have faith, you're not going to live that life. It's impossible to live that kind of a life without having that kind of a faith. Any other questions? Then we can take a tea break.